Hello, and welcome back to another podcast. This podcast is around embodiment and men's embodiment. There's a lot of talk about men's embodiment, and what I'm going to go into here is what does that actually mean? I'm going to speak about the three Dantian, or the three cauldrons, which is a very ancient understanding of what the body is. That there is a deep intelligence not only in the brain or the heart, but also lower down in the body into the field of intuition, into the feminine consciousness. And this is the foundation of my work, is coming further into the body so that we're not living this limited understanding of life through the brain. We're starting to understand our interconnection with life. This is when we become real men. Enjoy the podcast. So if you're interested in any of the material and you're wanting to take the first steps then into how do I embody further into the body, I've included a link below, and you can download then. It's a 12-minute practice on interconnection and co-regulating with the earth. So it's understanding that the earth has a nervous system and we have a nervous system. And when we plug into the nervous system of the earth, our whole regulation system slows down very, very quickly. So it's a 12-minute practice that you can use anytime you want to, and it's really, really useful. It's kind of one of the fundamental practices I do every day. Click on the link below. Also, if you want to do this work, reach out to me, niall.graham@hotmail.com. Enjoy today's podcast. Okay, so welcome back. So this is a really deep conversation. And it's also really present in culture at the moment. You know, there's a lot of people talking about men need to be more embodied, need to be more present, need to be more grounded. So in this podcast is just really jumping into this subject. How do we actually do that? And what are the reasons why we aren't being in our bodies more? So the first thing I want to introduce is the idea. There's a couple of ideas here. The first one is they talk about this idea the longest journey that a man has to make is from his heart or from his head to his heart. And I'm going to suggest that actually there's a longer journey again, deepening down into the belly. So the reason I come about to that is that there is an older text in the ancient texts in Ireland and also in the ancient texts in Eastern philosophy, which talks about the three Dantian in China, and in Ireland they're called the three cauldrons of intelligence. So what these places are is three areas in the body where there's a different level of consciousness. So there's the head, there's the heart, and there's the Hara. And there are different levels of consciousness within the body. So for a lot of men then, because we're only functioning from our head, that's what we've been taught, that's all we know, we're only speaking, thinking, and experiencing life through the rationale, through the logic, through the reductionist, how we break things down into different components. That's a very kind of thinking way of being. So it's also the way that science works as well. It's a very reductionist way of seeing the world. So when we bring it into the greater context of what we say that's missing in the world in a patriarchal or a rational or a masculine society we're missing this connective tissue of life. So when we start bringing in the framework then of different levels of awareness within the body, then we're starting to break down into deeper levels of awareness. So the heart is about connection. The heart is about emotions. Its heart is also about feeling. Now that's not only just feeling our emotions, it's about being able to feel another, being able to tune into another's body and feel if they're depressed, if they're sad, or if they're happy. We get to experience life. And what they say about emotions is that the emotions are the interconnective tissue of life. So if we can't feel our emotions, then we also can't feel interconnected to other people. We can't feel other people. So whenever our heart's open, we get to experience and feel other people. We get to have a sense of compassion, of empathy, of understanding. So the other thing about emotions is that emotions are the color of life. So if we're not connected to emotions, we tend to see life in a very dull way. It's colorless. It's gray. It's like getting up in the morning, going to work, getting home, eating food, going to bed. This kind of sense of life. When we're connected to our emotions, our hearts, our sense of love, life is more exciting. We also want to connect to people more. We feel people more. Life becomes slightly a deeper way of being. So I can understand why people say men need to move from their heads to their hearts. But what I see in society and what I learned in myself is that there we have to go deeper. Men or women want men to be connected to our emotions, but what they deeply want is to feel safe around us. And that involves us being grounded. That involves us going down into the belly, into our sexuality, and facing those parts of us. So to speak a little bit about the Hara, my experience of the Hara, I've been working with the Hara now for 4 to 5 years, but this changed everything for me. So the Hara is the equivalent of the womb space in woman. So the Hara then is the feminine principle of life, the feminine consciousness. So the Hara is the place of intuition. It's the place of interconnectedness to life, to nature, to the interweaving and understanding that we are part of life. So when we go back to the womb or the intelligence of the feminine consciousness, we start to feel and see that we are interconnected to life. And it's not this sense of like we are all one and blah, blah, blah. There's an interrelationship with all of life. So yes, I'm a human, and there are animals, there are nature, there is life herself underneath my feet, and there's an interconnection. And we understand that through the Hara. So we start to see actually how then we become so disconnected from life itself, so disconnected from land, so disconnected from earth, and so disconnected from our felt sense of being a human on the earth because this part of us was shut down. The feminine consciousness, the feminine wisdom was all shut down in the body. And we as men have just as much access to this as women. Now, women have a physical womb, so they have a physical part of their body that is able to birth into the world, but we have an energetic equivalent. So we start to see then, when we get stuck up in the brain, we disconnect from life. We disconnect from a deeper understanding and a meaning of what it is to be in life. We're also disconnected from what I see as like a deeper sense of purpose of who we are on a very deep level. It's the connection of soul. Hara is the connection of soul, deeply, deeply within our bones, an understanding of why we're here. So when we're trying to understand our way through life, we're disconnected from all these other parts. The other piece that I really want to bring in here is our disconnection from our cocks, from our sexuality. So whenever we are disconnected from our cocks and we hear this talked about in society, it's like, I wasn't thinking, I was thinking with my dick. So there's a disconnect then between what our sexuality wants and what our brains wants or what our hearts wants. So we end up then being shaped by, so whenever we're feeling sexual or whenever we're feeling horny, we end up living that out in the world that maybe our heart isn't interested in. Maybe our brain is like, don't do that, but we still end up doing it as well because there's a disconnection in the body. And this is why Hara is so important, because Hara weaves all these aspects back to us. So just to speak a little bit more about we talking about this idea of being more present and grounded. So where our awareness is in the body is how we experience life. So often I start with one-on-one sessions with men. I go, where do you feel like your awareness is in your body? And often they'll say, here. So if our awareness is here, then the lens that we see life through is from the rational, from that part of us that wants to break things down and understand things. When we start moving our awareness into our hearts, how we experience the world then is more emotional. We start to see more love, more connection. We start to feel other people more. We start to feel love. We start to feel a deep sense of feeling the world around us. And when we bring our awareness then down into the lower body, there's a whole other understanding of life. Deep connection to soul, deep connection to wisdom, deep connection to other realms. So being connected to wisdom is also being connected to Hara is also being connected to the ancestors. Because the womb space is a multi-dimensional part of us. So when we disconnected from the feminine teachings, from the feminine wisdom, we also disconnected from our ancestors. So when we come down into the womb space, there is deep wisdom of lineages. There is deep wisdom of intuition. There's just a deeper knowing. So to experience ourselves only here, we're losing all this deeper knowledge of the body. We also can't be grounded if our awareness is not in the belly, is not connected to our feet, is not connected to our hips, not connected to our perineum, then we can't feel grounded. We also can't feel present. And I remember when I first started to be more present as a man, I used to just clench everything down and try and focus in hard. So for us who haven't really become embodied and understand what it is to be embodied, that's how we become more present. We try to shut everything down so that we're in the moment. That's the opposite of presence. Presence is where we're more available. We've created more space in the body. We're more open in the body. So the problem then with living in our heads is we're emotionally disconnected. We find it harder then to connect to people. We find it harder then to connect to our sexuality. It's more difficult then also to be able to regulate our emotions because we're living from a top-down strategy. So the brain then, because the brain feels unsafe, the ego feels unsafe, and there's no sense of depth underneath the brain, then he has this top-down strategy. Control, shut it down, navigate it from the point of view of strategizing, taking it out, rationalizing it, shutting down the emotions. This is a top-down strategy. This is what we see in society. But when we then start to navigate into the lower part of the body, then we're able to be present. And this is why we need to like turn men upside down. When we start bringing our awareness into the belly, then we're able to inhabit and also hold. We have the capacity to be able to hold all of who we are. That's what it is to be a man for me. And that means whenever we get emotionally dysregulated or we go into reactive states, we are grounded enough to be able to hold those emotions, to be able to cradle those emotions, instead of what a lot of spiritual teachings tell us to get away from the emotions, shut them down, or observe them from this state of awareness. And what I'm teaching here is that we're really embodying into an underneath. That we have more ground underneath our emotions so that we can feel them, we can express them, but we're not overtaken by them. One of my teachers, Robert Masters, he talks about this, so that we have more space within us that we're not fusing with these emotions. So whenever the inner child gets reactive, that we're not just automatically going on a spree with him, that we're deep enough, that we're present enough in our own beings, that we have a little bit of space underneath, that we're able to hold these parts of us. Because many of us then, our inner child is maybe in our hearts or a little bit lower into the body. And if we're trying to control the inner child from up here, it's a losing battle. Because the emotions are much, much stronger than the brain. So that's the first part, is like, what's the point of being in the body? Because that's where life is. Ultimately, for me, the thing that I've learned the most around this is like becoming more intimate with the Hara and coming back to that space in the body. That's where I came home to myself. That's where I came home to the body. And that's where I stopped searching in the outside world for that sense of home within. I also stopped searching to women for that sense of home within, for that sense of love, for that sense of approval or intimacy that I was looking for years. So ultimately, it's a path of coming back to ourselves. And how do we do that? We gotta face all the shit that's in the way. That takes a lot of time. I'm going to be going into that in a second. But I want to speak first of all about like, how do we become disconnected from the body? Because whenever we're children, we come into the world, have full spectrum connection. We have full spectrum emotions. We're grieving 1 second, then we're happy and joyful the next second, then we're playing 1 second, and then we're conked out the next second. So we have this like full spectrum of emotions whenever we were younger, and we didn't have that shame that was put on us later on in life. So I want to speak a little bit around that, and you may be able to relate to some of these. So the main thing is for men that I see time and time again is that we are ashamed out of our emotions. Don't cry, shut down your emotions, don't show weakness. And so how that looks then as adults is as soon as we get an emotion or we get a fear or we get a sense of sadness coming up, we have created this block to shut it down straight away. So this is a trauma response. Fight, flight, or freeze. So we either go into reaction, we either get out of the situation, or we totally freeze. And I see that a lot in Ireland. A lot of men just have gone into a freeze state. Like they look like they're here. I had this myself. I look like I'm here, but I've checked out ages ago. So we disconnected from the body, and we're not able to regulate ourselves then whenever we go into those states, because that's what we experienced whenever we were children. Because our emotions were shamed by our parents, they were shamed by our friends, they were shamed by society as a whole. And so it's really difficult actually for men to then come back to the point of seeing emotions as safe. And there's a big narrative out there if I show emotions that I'm going to be seen as a soft touch. People are going to take advantage of me. My emotions aren't welcome. So there's a shame around our emotions. We shut down the body. So if you shut down this area of us, where do we go? Here. That's where we end up. We have no other choice. Some people actually end up further up here. Part of my journey was to come out of the spiritual realms, because I was brought up in a Christian home, back into the body. So we become disembodied. There's a part of us that doesn't even feel here, feel part of life. So this is a major, major thing. How do we get back into the body? The only way we can do that is to deal with the shadow aspects, to deal with all the shame from our younger years of life, to deal with our relationship with our emotions, with our cocks, with our Hara. Come back into the body. And it's a long, long journey, but I promise you it's worth it. When we start feeling life again, when we start feeling connected to life again, when we start feeling connected to others again, it's so, so worth. The other one then, which is really common in Ireland, is shame around sexuality. So we didn't speak about sexuality. Nobody talked about erections. Nobody talked about women bleeding. When there was kissing coming on the TV, it was shamed. We make up all these jokes around sexuality, around cocks. And so there's a general sense of shame. A lot of our parents then didn't feel comfortable being naked, wouldn't talk about sex in the family at all. And that was certainly the environment that I was brought in. There was just a blanket shame around sexuality, nudity, anything along those lines. So what does that do? It disconnects us from our cocks, because we have this sexual energy that's trying to come up. But as soon as we feel the sexual energy, body shuts down. That doesn't put the sexual energy away. Sexual energy goes into shadow, and then we end up playing it out in the world. We end up having sex with people we don't want to have sex with. We end up repeatedly masturbating. We end up watching too much porn, because the sexuality is an energy, and if it's blocked, it finds a way out. So you may relate to some of those stories as well. Many of us are also hurt. We were abused by our fathers, by our mothers. We were bullied in school, and so we didn't have safe environments where we could regulate those emotions. I remember I was bullied for a couple of years in school before I said anything to anyone else about it. But by that time, the damage was already done. So I was already so dysregulated in myself that by the time I told someone, it had already done a lot of damage. But I didn't believe that anyone was going to be there for me. That was my story. And it wasn't really tended to that well, but I had to tell someone at some point. But some people then, we don't believe, or we have a felt sense that people in the family can't support us, or teachers won't support us. So we don't say these things. And there's a general sense of shutdown in our bodies. Again, it's just repeatedly this shutting down. Fathers who were emotionless, who were shut down, couldn't express emotions, or didn't express emotions and then exploded, became very, very unsafe for us to be around. Chaotic mothers who were very, very dysregulated, very controlling, quite dominating, again, shutting down our emotions. So many of us just, it wasn't safe to feel. That's the main thing. It wasn't safe to be in the body, and we were just strategizing our way through life. Thankfully, we're coming up in a society now where parents are a little bit more regulated. They understand their nervous system, and they also understand to support their children in that. But in our generation, guys in their 30s and 40s, that wasn't the reality. So that's how we got disconnected from our bodies. That's how we ended up stuck up here. And that's why we end up as adults, unable to function in relationship, unable to function in our jobs, feeling dysregulated, feeling overwhelmed, feeling like we don't understand life, feeling like we don't understand our emotions, because we're not connected to these points within the body that have deeper intelligence. And to be honest, for me, my experience of the Hara is intelligence way beyond my understanding. So the brain and the Hara can't really understand each other. But the Hara is that point of making sense of life. Deep, deep intelligence within the Hara, deep intelligence of the feminine consciousness. So our lives become one-dimensional, simplified, functioning, getting by, but devoid of meaning. So what do we do about it? Coming back to the original idea, where our awareness is in our body is what we experience. So if you check in with yourself in this moment, where is your awareness? If you're up here and your full awareness is up here, and then if you start to breathe into the lower belly and you feel that you are disconnected from this area, then you're most likely mostly up in the head. I think, like, before I started this work, I'd say I was 90% up in my head until I started to get down. So it takes a lot of effort because we have to face all those fears of being in the body. It feels very, very unsafe initially. So what we do about then is start to use breath work. We start to do, especially for me, starting to work into the pelvis, starting to open up the sexual centers of the body, starting to open up the lower body, the pelvic region, the perineum region, starting to open up the hips, starting to move from that area of the body. Because one of the first things whenever sexuality is shut down, then hips are shut down, and then we're disconnected from earth, because the whole body is like a biological system. So whenever we're not able to be present in our hips, then we're also not able to be connected to the earth. So what we're really trying to do here is move the awareness deeper down into the body. So practices like yoga, walking out in the country, breath work, and also just the understanding that the earth herself has an energetic field. So even just feeling into the earth. So if you're sitting in this moment, how would it be to just expand your awareness a little bit into starting to feel the earth? We start to get a presence. It's called a Schumann resonance. It's a frequency, I think it's like 7.3 hertz. We start to feel the earth underneath our feet. So just noticing in this moment. That's it. Breathing into the belly, working into the lower body. But for me, the biggest thing is literally recognizing, where is my awareness in this moment? Where is my awareness now? And if it's in my head, start breathing into the belly. Start dropping down in the body. Because there's a whole other world down here. I think that society is set up at the moment with more strategies of understanding ourselves, understanding our mind, understanding our emotions from a rational perspective. But I think it's more powerful to come down into the body and understand through direct experience. But the mind trying to understand the emotions, or the mind trying to understand Hara or sexuality, it's not a losing game, but it's a limited game, because the complexity of who we are down here is this part of us doesn't match it. That's the beauty of life. At some point we come to an understanding of life that it's too hard to understand. The mystery of life. So I have done a little meditation. I put in a link below. So if you want to just get a sense, and the meditation that I put in is really co-regulating with the earth herself. So it's understanding that our nervous system is not designed to regulate ourselves. Yes, we can do it, but our nervous system is kind of the deeper layers of the body that are interconnected to all of life. So our nervous system is looking for information all the time and also emitting information all the time. So we're constantly transmitting some sort of energy. This is why you feel another person if they're scared, if they're angry or whatever. The nervous system is transmitting this energy. And what that means is that we are also able to feel things. So we're able to feel a tree, we're able to feel plants, we're able to feel animals, other humans, and we're also able to feel the earth. And we are designed as biological beings to regulate our nervous system with the earth, co-regulate with the earth. And this is why we feel better around other people who have regulated nervous systems. It calms down our nervous system. Our nervous system relaxes and co-regulates with another person, and we can do that with the earth herself. And this requires us to drop into the belly and being able to feel more connected to the ground. So the more you tune into the earth, then the more the nervous system, the frequency of the nervous system starts to tune in with the earth, and the nervous system itself starts to regulate. So it's a 12-minute practice. You click on the link below, put in your email address, and I'll send it into your link box. And if you have any questions around this podcast, then please feel free to reach out to me at niall.graham@hotmail.com. If you do want to do this work of embodying all of you, becoming a full man, reach out to me. I have some places coming up at the beginning of September. Until then, thank you.